We are at what is possibly the final day of the trial if the jury is quick with the verdict. They discussed the jury instruction changes since Thursday. Lori tells the judge she still plans to rest, and the judge asked about a possible second phase of this trial for aggravation. Now, I will say, it appeared to be that the state says they'll be seeking emotional harm and presence of an accomplice. Maybe. The microphone wasn't being used, and it was annoying. And there would be testimony if there was a second phase. Lori says she has 2 issues to bring up. She wants to know how the jury is selected from the alternates, and the judge holds up a box and says we're drawing them out of a container. That'll be done after closing arguments, and the alternatives won't be free in case a juror gets sick, but until that happens, they won't be allowed to deliberate. Lori complained about her own interview at the police station because parts were redacted. The judge explains that you can't play the full interview due to hearsay. The witness, according to Lori, testified it was the full interview, but Lori didn't question it until it was too late. The jury will know it's redacted. Lori is visibly angry that the jury will not get to see her full interview. The judge says he doesn't remember if it was said it was a full interview or not, but he would be surprised if someone said it was her full interview being admitted. At this point, I went back and checked because I remembered them saying full interview, and the state asked, and is this a copy of the full interview? And the witness responded, it is. So Lori is right. The state and witness messed up, but Lori missed her timing to argue this. Lori then mentions her advisory council checked it and confirmed what I had just looked up. The judge questions if it was a full interview for appeal purposes, and the state says that was not what it was for. The state described how it is redacted, but it shows more than what was shown in court, but the Tiley hearsay is redacted. The judge responds, well, the state has closed their evidence, so the judge seems kind of annoyed, because the judge knows the state screwed up. The state screwed up, and there's no way to fix it. Lori asked, then what was meant by saying it was a full interview? And the judge says, I don't know. That is something somebody could have asked the witness. Maybe it was the full interview of your version of what happened. Lori says the defense has an exhibit that is just the full interview and wants to replace the full interview that the state said they had that is redacted with instead the actual full interview. And the judge told her no. So the jury is going to get an interview portion, all the hearsay redacted, more than we saw in court. Lori is pissed. The judge explains that hearsay portions aren't allowed. Either side could have clarified what full interview meant earlier, and they didn't. The witness asks anything else, and Lori says, that's it, in a very exasperated, high-pitched tone. She's very not happy. At this point, we waited on the jury, and the defense does officially rest quickly in front of the jury. The jury instruction will be read out. These won't be exact, but my video will focus on key parts, especially relevant to this case. I am sorry if I stumble at any part here. My spelling was atrocious trying to get through this somehow, and I did have to step away since writing this, so I'm going to do the best I can. This is my second time reading through this because I got too stumped last time. The jury decides the case, and the instructions are the rules. No guessing about facts, only consider evidence shown in court. If the court sustained an objection to a question, you must ignore the question and any answer given. Stricken testimony must not be considered. Direct and circumstantial evidence are explained. The jury decides how important the evidence is. Do not concern yourself why certain parts of an exhibit are redacted or what those redacted portions might reveal. An indictment is not evidence. A charge is not evidence. The state must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant represented herself and her defending herself should not be considered by you. Opening and closing statements are not evidence. That's very important because remember, Lori kept saying in opening a bunch of things that she had no evidence for. You may accept everything a witness says or none of it. Don't give greater weight to law enforcement testimony. Expert opinion testimony must be considered like any testimony. The defendant need not produce evidence. The defendant not presenting evidence is not evidence of guilt. The defendant doesn't need to testify, and that choice does not affect your decision. Please, being near a crime does not make you guilty. Only consider statements to law enforcement if you consider her statements to be voluntary. So basically, if they were to decide that it was an involuntary interview, they don't have to consider it. You must start with presumption of innocence beyond a reasonable doubt. The law does not require beyond all doubt. You must find the defendant committed a voluntary act. The crime of committing an act first-degree murder needs proof that a conspiracy to commit first-degree murder needs proof that with Alex Cox it was agreed to that with two or more that they will commit the act of first-degree murder, which is premeditated. The time needed for premeditation can be short. The conspiracy portion means the defendant agreed with another to engage in a certain conduct. The defendant intended to promote or assist in the conduct. The conduct would constitute first-degree murder, and they knew it was a crime. A conspiracy may be inferred, showing a common criminal objective. You can become a member of a conspiracy without knowing all the detail. Accidentally helping a conspiracy does not make you a conspirator. The conspiracy has to be knowingly formed. A person joined the conspiracy is just as guilty as the creators. A lot of this honestly isn't relevant, as we know there's only two people, Alex Cox and Lori, so there's not like there's a third party. Maybe she learned later, unless Lori throws some curveball claiming it was actually a conspiracy with Tylee and Alex Cox and she didn't know, which there's no evidence of, then a lot of this is irrelevant, but they're putting it all in there just in case. A person is justified in using deadly force in self-defense if that is needed to prevent unlawful deadly force and didn't present more deadly force than is considered justified if a reasonable person thinks the danger is present. Actual danger isn't required. You must decide if a reasonable person would agree with using that force in that situation. No duty to retreat if the person using the force was allowed to be in that location and wasn't committing a crime. The state has the burden to prove the defendant or co-conspirator didn't act in that justification. You are justified in using force in defense of a third person if a reasonable person thinks it will be required to defend against deadly force. The force must stop when the danger ends. This is where you get to the point that they shot Charles once he was on the ground. The state has to prove the person didn't react with such deadly a defense. The crime prevention instruction, this is something Lori particularly wanted. You can use deadly force to stop another from committing a crime of aggravated assault. There is no requirement that the threat to the person's safety is required. It can only be used as far as stopping aggravated assault. It's considered to be acting legally if they reasonably believe they were stopping an aggravated assault. They are justified even if that person is not committing the crime, but the person accused believes they were committing the crime. A person is not justified to using or threatening physical force due to verbal provocation alone, or if the defendant or co-conspirator provoked them, unless the defendant and co-conspirator withdrew with the belief they couldn't withdraw. So basically, if you provoke them into taking action, and then you don't try to leave, you can't use the crime prevention instruction. And that's why Lori said she went to the kitchen, but there's nothing about Alex and like trying to flee or anything like that. But so that's something you're allowed to consider. And if the force continued to be used against them, definitions of words were then given. I'm not going to go through all the definitions. It's like basic stuff, intent. Four-person's job explained. The jury will set their own deliberation schedule. Closing arguments are after lunch, and the jury is dismissed. Lori asked for her full interview to be admitted for appeal purposes. The state isn't against it. The judge agrees. But remember, the jury will not see her full interview. So that's where we're at. We are lunchtime when the time I'm recording this, and we are about to get into the closing arguments. Now, we'll see how much I can shorten it down, because I do want to make sure I hit all the key points, but the best way to watch a closing argument, just like with an opening argument, is to always watch it yourself. Other channels will have it. I will have my own rundown. That is the plan. And I am, at the time, recording this before they've done it, I am still of the personal belief that Lori is going to have a very, very short closing statement. I guess we are going to find out. The state starts hard. July 18th, 2019, just 7 days after this defendant and her co-conspirator Alex Cox shot and killed Charles, this defendant texted her soon-to-be next husband, Chad Daybell, about Charles's life insurance policy. Her words tell us she was involved in this killing. Her actions and her words in telling Chad Daybell tell us the motive. Chad and money. The morning of that 18th of July, Lori Vallow texted Chad, quote, "I just got the letter from the insurance company saying I am not the beneficiary. It's a spear through my heart. Who do you think he changed it to?" Later that day, she sent Chad another text quoted, "So I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. Probably it was Ned before we got rid of him." Her words after 7 days, just 7 days after the murder, tells us that was her and Alex killing Charles. Why? For that money. The plan to kill Charles wasn't just known by her lover, Chad Daybell, and her brother, and co-conspirator Alex Cox. It was also known by her brother, Adam. Adam told us that he knew about Lori's beliefs and she had been saying about Charles's concern for himself. He knew about this plan for an interview that morning of July 11th when Charles arrived at Lori's house, as she knew he would. Charles texted Adam and said, Al is here. Adam texted back, they are planning something. He knew. 3 days later, when Adam learned Charles was killed, he confronted his mother and said Lori and Alex conspired to kill Charles. He knew and he was right. Lori's ex-friend, Christina Atwood, told you about the uncomfortable in a dinner a month before the killing of Charles, where Alex Cox was talking about just wanting to kill Charles. This defendant didn't care and talked about how she had been drugging Charles. Christina was so disturbed, she told Lori that if something happens to Charles, I'm going to have to go to the police, and Christina knew, and she was right. Nancy Jo Hancock had just met Charles a few days before, texted, had been on the phone for hours. Charles told her all about Lori. She said Charles was afraid for his own safety. She understood the motive and said, you should tell Lori you changed the beneficiary. Nancy Jo knew, and she was right. Lori Vallow wanted $1 million and Chad Daybell. Her and Alex Cox used their twisted religious beliefs so they could kill the evil-possessed Charles and be like Nephi. The evidence presented will prove to you above a reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Now, she says she will split this into 3 sections. First is timeline and motive. Second is jury instructions and evidence presented. Anything defendant said in her opening that was not presented at trial through a witness or an exhibit, it is not evidence. Which basically what she's trying to say is, she's trying to address Lori saying, the evidence will show, and then that evidence never appearing. She's addressing it. Saying it in the opening is not evidence. Using the evidence that has been presented and admitted at trial, the state will show you the defendant is guilty of beyond a reasonable doubt in this trial. Finally, it is the justification defense, the excuses. The defendant would like you to believe that they had a valid basis for shooting and killing Charles, and how, in fact, there was no justification for what happened. What happened was first-degree premeditated execution of Charles Vallow. The big change happens in June 29th or 30th when you learn that Charles learned about the affair. He knows Lori is cheating on him. He contacted Chad Daybell and contacted Chad's wife about this. He told Adam. He told the defendant. Everybody knew. Charles now knew this. July 9th is the first since finding out about the affair that Charles will return to Arizona. Charles booked Adam a flight. Alex told Adam he could stay with him. Lori then started talking to Chad Daybell. She knows about this intervention. She knows this because of her text messages. Lori rounds up the troops to make sure it's just Charles coming over on July 11th. She tells Melanie she can't go to a wedding. It's coming to a head. This week will change everything. Lori texted Alex saying the plot thickens. Call me when you can. She tells Alex to stick closer to her. Mel has to stick closer to her too. They are planking. She means planning, but it says planking in the text, and they said this in this part. Some kind of intervention. Lori says she needs to get the stuff at Alex's house. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Then Alex calls, and they talk for over an hour. They talk about how to stop the intervention, how they will be like Nephi, 149 minutes of calls with Chad on the morning of the 10th of July. Lori is also texting Melanie B that it is important for the mission to keep Brandon distracted, and Melanie will pretend to be sick. Now Summer is helping the defendant. Everyone is covered to make sure that Charles will be alone, continuing talks with Chad, her soon-to-be husband. Alex doesn't respond to Adam's messages because Lori told Alex to be like Nephi and to be in her house the night of the 10th. Summer gave Lori an out. Stay at Summer's house. Lori doesn't take it. Lori has a mission to do. Alex is at Lori's house with a gun, 2 magazines, and some underwear in a bag. He is ready for this mission. Summer updates Lori that Adam is waiting for Alex to respond. Lori is still talking to Chad. We can see from the GPS Charles Vallow arrives as expected. Adam after texted Charles they were planning something. Charles' last outgoing message was followed by a message from Adam, not read until 12:13 p.m. How long is Charles at the residence here? Lori says it was was so short. Well, Charles comes inside and tells Lori to take JJ. Lori holds onto the phone. It is fast. We know it is actually 12 minutes long. It is not a fast incident. Lori and Alex are doing their mission and being like Nephi. After Lori leaves in Charles Vallow's car with his phone, JJ and Tylee, Lori and Alex call 2 times after she leaves. 47 minutes pass before Alex calls 911. 47 minutes to stage the scene. They were told that the shooting just happened and CPR was given on the scene, but it didn't make sense. Then Lori Vallow returned. Lori was interviewed. We know Lori has Charles's phone that whole afternoon. We know Alex is taking photos of Charles's phone. Lori, who didn't call Charles's family or kids, is calling the mortuary. She's calling Chad. Then Lori returns back to the scene and when asked, handed the phone over, giving the code. Lori and Chad called and talked all night. There aren't calls to Charles's family or kids. It's calls to her lover, soon-to-be husband, Chad Daybell. The motive is money. The anger she showed when she wouldn't get the money. We didn't go through the text messages, but her and Charles are very romantically involved by the time Charles is murdered. You can go through them. Chad knows about the car and the insurance, the zombies, the possessed spirits, and being like Nephi, all ways to justify killing. They play the Banner life insurance call. What you hear is Lori Vallow being untruthful to Banner life insurance. We will talk about the credibility later, but this defendant lies and exaggerates even the small things. There is no accident when you shoot someone twice. They show Lori talking to Chad about the life insurance changing. It was probably Ned before we got rid of him. We, not I. My brother Alex, but we did. Lori knew a month before she went to Social Security how much already she was going to get from Social Security. Lori knew she would be getting $4,000 a month. Lori went into Charles's computer to find the change and then sent it to Chad and then Kay to complain. Lori, let's see here. Lori had talked to Chad as far back as November 18th when Chad came and stayed in her house. Screenshots of flights of Lori living the good life with Chad as soon-to-be husband after disappearing. She marries Chad Daybell November 5th. April, she created an email. She used to send messages to Chad and offered to use Charles's money to fly him and he could stay at the house. In June, she pretended to be Charles with the email. Charles finds these and lets everyone know he did. The jig is up. They show the story Chad wrote that mirrors him and Lori meeting. Lori wants money and has not worked for 13 years. Charles pays for everything. Not a big difference if she gets $1 million and $4,000 a month. Lori's religious beliefs are posted on the screen. She did not need to repent. She was in a celestial state, translated, physical, and spiritually changing. She was above priesthood. She knew about others who were dark, evil, Z's, zombies. She was like Nephi, justified to kill Charles. We learned from Adam she was turning into a celestial state. According to her, Lori told Adam she did not need to eat. That's what it said. But was that through the power of the green chili chicken enchiladas? I don't remember her not having to eat actually being mentioned by Adam. Maybe he said it in like a pre-interview, but the defense isn't objecting, so now the jury hears that. Lori told Adam she had the authority higher than the priesthood, and they play testimony from the trial of Adam. Yes, they're playing testimony from the actual trial itself as well. We learned from Serena Sharp. Lori said she didn't have to repent and was translating. Charles was possessed. They play video here too. Speaking of credibility, Serena Sharp has no dog in this fight. We all know she's truthful. She is truthful because we see Ned in lots of texts. Lori was saying this to lots of people. And like Nephi, she can get rid of him. Another clip from court played. You will remember the defendant got upset that the witness used the term zombie. But again, why would Serena make this up? She remembers this is the term the defendant used. Lori Vallow keeps telling people about her evil, dark husband, who under her religion she is authorized to get rid of. So now, from Christina Atwood, that her beliefs keep deviating more. They play another clip from the trial, basically showing that she's deviating from the religion these other people believed. Now they move to the jury instructions to use the evidence to make proof beyond a reasonable doubt. She explains circumstantial evidence and that the law doesn't differentiate between direct and circumstantial evidence. Her example is seeing someone walking down the beach or seeing their footprint showing the direction after the fact. You know either way what happened. The burden of proof is explained. Reasonable doubt gives you a firm belief in the defendant's guilt, but is not proof beyond all doubt. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. We know Alex Cox shot and killed Charles on July 11th of 2019. He called 911. It was his gun. Lori told the police he killed Charles, having Alex come over with a gun so Alex could be there when Charles would be there to pick up JJ, taking Charles's phone so he couldn't leave, so he couldn't take JJ to school. Lori didn't give the phone to him, didn't throw it at him. Whatever you might do, she walked away while he tried to grab it. Lori's actions and words show she is the only reason Charles was in there and why he was shot. Lori said it was fast, but it was 12 minutes. Her actions when she came back, she wasn't concerned about Alex's injury, her dead husband, her children without a father. Her words to Chad that Charles changed his life insurance policy before we got rid of him. This happened the first day Charles returned to town after learning about the affair. She goes through the premeditation, repeats 12 minutes of time before Charles was shot. We have planning, not just premeditation that morning. It starts in June when Alex Cox started to talk about killing Charles, and Lori talked about drugging Charles. They play a clip about that. July 9th, Lori is living in a house paid by Charles. She doesn't like Charles, but Charles is her cash cow. On the 9th, there's a plan. You can see all those text messages about the plan with so many different people. The 10th, Melanie wants to go to a wedding, but Lori tells her no, she must stay. A mission to stop an intervention. No. Lori tells Alex it will be like Nephi. Lori doesn't want Charles to divorce her. Lori doesn't want to lose her temple recommend. She wants to be like Nephi and get rid of her husband, and they play a clip about it. Lori questioned about this story, but you heard people say it was about a justified killing. Zombies, Z's. She is above the priesthood. Alex brought a gun over, not a friend, not a Book of Mormon. He brought a gun and waited for his sister's husband to enter the house to kill him. Lori gets updates about where Adam is, so they won't be interfering with the justified killing. Lori tried to rewrite the timeline, but it wasn't quick. It was 12 minutes. The evidence supports premeditated murder. 2 shots. Second one, Charles was on the floor, still able to move, and he was executed. That is premeditated first-degree murder no matter what you thought before that second shot. The evidence shows it was a classic shored wound. Talk of bamboo shirts or Charles bouncing, those hypotheticals don't make sense. When Charles was shot, Charles fell to his knees first. We don't know how long until he fell over and was shot a second time. He could possibly have talked and moved after being shot, then he was shot while on his back, murdered, executed. Talk of conspiracy. Lori talked for months about Charles being possessed. Talk of killing him, poisoning, being like Nephi. Make sure Alex is waiting with a gun. Lori knew when Charles would show up. She took his phone and wouldn't give it back. Before the alleged Tylee bat, she said she asked Charles about Adam. How does she know that? Well, no, she had Charles's phone before that interview. Lori would not give the phone back. She needs Alex to come out. He brought that gun for a reason. She said, we will be like Nephi. She knew it would be first-degree murder, and that's what Nephi did. But this murder was not justified. Lori comes back to the house nonchalant, no questions, laughing about her neighbors. She doesn't need to repent. She can determine who may live or die, and she has done that. Scope of the conspiracy. We can see Alex saying, stay with me, and we will be like Nephi. Her saying that to Alex. Her conduct infers a conspiracy of Alex coming over to shoot and kill Charles. They go back to the timeline again, everything we already heard, but in order and just made shorter. Closing arguments are a lot of repeats, just to be clear. Lori questioned the detective about how hot it was with JJ in the car, but not about an unlocked gun in the house with the kid. She is the reason JJ is out in the car alone. 47 minutes to call 911 to stage the scene. No CPR. Wait for Charles to be dead. They talked. Actions and inactions. Lori's statement is Tylee came out with a bat, but that's all Lori saying things, setting things up for Charles to be killed. They play Lori saying Charles seemed to be plotting something. Lori says Charles was screaming and reaching for the phone, and Lori makes sure Charles doesn't leave while her autistic child is sitting in the car so Alex can shoot Charles. This defendant set up Charles. Staging the scene, no CPR was given. No one tried to save Charles. He had been dead for a while when the authorities arrived. Something was off with the timeline. The bat was placed to the right of Charles, but we heard from the witness Charles was left-handed. His hand showed he was left-handed. No drops of blood or marks from the fight she claims Charles had. Shoes were left by the door to make it look like Lori Vallow ran out in fear after this horrific incident. Lori did enter the Walgreens with shoes. Something was on her feet. They play a clip of Kay's interview about him being left-handed. and how it doesn't make sense. Alex obviously forgot Charles was left-handed. The bat is needed to claim a legal justification, not a spiritual one. They show images of Charles's wound, no damage to the bat, blood is red, no blood and no damage. A semi-pro baseball player has a baseball gun and his life is threatened, and he didn't hit someone with it. No smears or damage from a fight, just 2 small prints on the bat. It doesn't fit in the story. Charles's watch has no dings, but Lori wants you to think he was grappling and fighting. 12 minutes so Alex can get a small cut on his head that he dabs with a paper towel. You can see Lori wearing flip-flops entering the Walgreens. She wears them when arriving on the scene. The police did not search Charles's rental car. Consider if the people testifying are credible. The other witnesses have no reason to lie. Lori, however, does. Lori wasn't worried when she arrived. Her brother was allegedly hit in the head by her brother who plays semi-pro ball. She wasn't worried about him. He was fine. She knows that because it was staged. We have her arriving nonchalant and calm. She wants to make sure we know others on the scene were calm, but the others hadn't seen their husband get shot and killed by their brother. Lori's actions and statements don't fit the evidence. Her credibility is questionable this whole case. With Social Security, we learn on July 11th that they're, that they are separated. On August 12th, when she needs some money, she tells Social Security they're living together. She didn't tell them she'd remarried when she remarried. With life insurance, she said Charles was accidentally shot in the call. That was a lie. No accident shooting him twice. She wanted to know if she could do anything to get beneficiary changed. Lori says she has 5 kids. 3 are adults, 1 in common, and Tylee has her own Social Security from her father. She says these things because she can't help it. She wants to seem better than she is. In the police interview, she said she left JJ for 30 days, but it was actually 78 days. 58 days going to Hawaii and being with Chad and traveling with Chad. When Charles planned to move, Lori then showed up. She minimizes even this to make herself seem better. The shoes. Lori asked the detective if it was hot and she needed shoes. She wore shoes entering Walgreens. We have how nonchalant she was at the scene. Look at everything together. Finally, justification defenses. She was like Nephi. Alex was like Nephi, but they weren't justified under the law. Charles yelling didn't justify shooting him. Provoking Charles means deadly force isn't justified. None of these apply. We know from physical evidence that Charles did not use the bat. He was a semi-pro player that wouldn't have ended that way if he had the bat. But even if you thought he had the bat and swung it, the shooting on the ground was not justified. He was no threat on the ground. Third-party defense. Lori says she wasn't even in the room when she heard the shot. You can't protect against the future or what already happened. Lori put herself outside the room, and the second shot also removes it. Crime scene prevention. Basically the same as the last one, slightly different wording. Any alleged crime is over when Lori left the room and doesn't work when Charles is on the ground. Guilt can't be established from mere presence. She brought her brother to the crime scene to make sure Charles was inside. Lori wanted to be with Chad and his money. She recruited people to help. Her and Alex would be like Nephi. Lori confessed when she told Chad, we got rid of him. The 12 minutes before she left, then 47 minutes until 911, she cried for you in the opening statement, but not on the body cam footage. She didn't cry in the interview. The physical evidence shows Lori's staged scene. Charles was executed that day for Lori's benefit. Charles is dead because Lori planned for it, and she wanted the money and Chad. The state asks you to find her guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Next up is Lori. And I have to say the court reporter even needed a break to, rest their fingers after that last statement. Mine are killing me. To add a bit of levity to a very serious situation, I have prepared a bingo card with things that I wouldn't be shocked if Lori Vallow did in the closing. And I have, of course, watched the full closing at this point, but I haven't filled out the bingo card. So we're going to see how accurate I was. It could have been a list, but this also just lets me check it off easily. And it's just like, it made it for me, so it's perfect. Lori's up. The state has 100% burden of proving I committed a crime. A grievous crime conspiracy to commit premeditated murder of my husband, Charles Vallow. The state has the burden to prove this was murder, not self-defense. And by the way, I'll probably fill this out at the end. Prevention instruction, the last line reads, if the state fails to carry this burden, you must find the defendant not guilty. The same in defense of a third person. The same in self-defense. And I have a little note here. She's reading the full thing each time with kind of a whimsically half whispering when she says, you must find the defendant not guilty. Like it's obvious. I'll put it that way. And to me, the defendant must the defendant doesn't have to prove their own innocence. The state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that proves beyond reasonable doubt. So she kind of repeats herself, I believe, there. You must find them not guilty. In Arizona, self-defense is not a crime. Let's look at what we learned in this trial. A shooting occurred. 911 was called. Law enforcement was noticed. Fire EMS arrived. I know at this point, you're probably like, this isn't exciting. It gets more interesting near the end. Alex Cox came out with hands up and was questioned by police. Lori came up with Tylee until police would speak with us. Lori asked for Tylee's medication for her panic attacks, but was not given to her. Again, why does this matter? Tylee was taken to the police department uncuffed. Alex was taken to the police department uncuffed. Lori and Tylee were taken to the police department in a police van. Lori claims the goal was to make small talk. There's an objection, first objection, and the judge says the jury will determine what the testimony did or did not show. She wanted to speak to them separately. All three were separated and answered all questions asked of us. They showed snippets of that interview. The state did not show the full interview. Most of the interview is admitted into evidence, and Lori gives the evidence number and physically holds up the CD and encourages the jury to watch the entire interview. It is important to determine her demeanor yourself. This event was 6 years ago, and many witnesses said their memory was probably better back then. My interview was back then, too. You did not see Tylee's interview, but we learned she did one. You did not see Alex's interview, but we learned he was interviewed by the previous case agent, who we also did not hear from in this trial. The state chose to not show you those interviews or let you listen to that 911 call. Objection. Sustained. The jury can't consider what wasn't brought into evidence. We learned in this trial that Alex was injured on the back of his head with a bump and a 1-inch laceration. We did not see those pictures as well. We learned that those three did not know their interviews were being recorded. We learned Alex's phone was taken, but no digital copy was taken, even though it's their normal protocol. We learned Alex's phone was returned later that day with no further inquiries. Lori and Tylee met with a victim's advocate. All three were dropped off at their house. They couldn't enter because they were directed to take the rental car and return later because the scene was cleaned up. We learned in this trial that they did as directed and left. They returned after contacted by the detective for Alex's walkthrough. Many detectives were present for the walkthrough, but the walkthrough was not recorded and no reports talk about it. Even though this would be crucial evidence for you, the jury. Objection. Struck. Jury should disregard. The state has to prove this wasn't self-defense, so why not show the jury all the evidence gathered? Objection. Sustained. Again. We learned Alex cooperated. Tylee cooperated. Lori cooperated. The police treated us that day as if it was self-defense. We learned Chandler police put out a press release that day. Objection. Sustained. Juries determined what was established. I don't think the press release ever made it in, by the way. She tried multiple times. That line there makes me think she wrote this a while back and has been slowly editing it. Under Arizona law, Lori, Tylee, and Alex had the right to self-defense. This event was not planned. It was shocking. We learned Chandler Police Department didn't do a thorough investigation. They did not swab Lori, Tylee, or Alex's hands for gunpowder residue. They did not luminol the gun or bat. They did not test the DNA on the bat. They did not test the projectile. They did not test the floorboard. They did not test my husband's shirt. They did not search the rental car. They did not search any cars. They tested the gun over 5 years later. It was treated as self-defense in a tragic family event. We learned in this trial me and Charles were having marital problems. This was self-defense. Charles didn't have to take the bat from Tylee that day. Charles could have made the choice to put the bat down. Oh my God, Lori, that is the worst possible thing you could have said with all the focus on you stealing his cell phone. A 2-minute period changed our lives forever. And for the forever there made me think of Sarah Boone's Forever. Same with Protocol. How are you supposed to choose between your daughter or your brother? Objection, testifying. The judge tells Lori not to testify about things not in evidence. How can you decide for another person if they are threatened? Objection is about the reasonable person standard. Judge allows it, but it sure will be brought up on rebuttal. The state showed I was praying for my husband. We were trying to do what was best for a child with special needs, JJ. It was a shock Charles changed his life insurance policy. I wasn't angry. I was disappointed for our children, our grown children and children at home. We learned a lot about the Book of Mormon prophet Nephi, and this is the basis for the state for murder over self-defense. They have a lot more than just Nephi. It is utterly ridiculous. In the Mormon culture, Nephi signifies strong faith and objection, testifying, sustained. The state's attempt to misconstrue a message about the wonderful religious figure Nephi and turn it into an order to kill someone is absurd. This is an attempt to retrofit a crime. Don't let them turn my family tragedy into a crime. When I am done speaking to you, the state gets to rebuke. This is the last word because it is their burden. Their burden to prove I committed a crime, and if you haven't seen the evidence I committed this crime, I am not guilty. The only interview submitted into evidence is mine. She holds up the CD. I encourage you to watch it. I told you what happened. That way, just the way it was. My state attacked my character, but only for you to decide. The state put up witnesses with no evidence of a conspiracy. They didn't show you evidence to commit murder. They showed you evidence of family tragedy. They showed the sad effects of a family torn apart by the tragedy, and then Lori walks off, leaving it. Now, I think I missed a line I wrote. Let me check here with the search function. Maybe I didn't. They didn't test my husband's shirt. I want to make sure that was in there because I know I put that on the list here. I'm going to count that as bamboo. So we're going to talk about it. Now, this is just Lori's closing. If it was both, I'd have a lot more. So let's see. We have state objection, bamboo, Nephi. I would say her argument is why not arrested earlier. Honestly, I would say that. Claiming they're retrofitting things is conspiracy to me. She didn't blame Tylee directly. I don't think I'd list this. I could maybe make an argument that like her talking of Tylee with the bat is blaming Tylee, but I'm not going to do that. She never mentioned Chad. She never said the evidence will show or did she say has shown? I'll check. I don't think she said that phrase. I was wanting that phrase. Never tested for gunshot revenue, complains about evidence, no talk of zombies, state objection was overruled, no enchiladas. The judge never stopped Lori unprompted. Sadly, there was no shock belt. I would say with religion, I'll put God. I probably should have said religion in general, and then Nephi specifically. That's more what I meant. She didn't blame JJ. She mentioned blow on the bat. And she said, family tragedy, we got a bingo. I didn't. I think she just said luminol. It doesn't matter now. She didn't mention her other convictions. She was not under 10 minutes, and she did blame Charles. She blamed Charles. That was outright there. Because Charles shouldn't have taken the bat, but Lori should have been taking his phone and luring him in. So, arguably, you could argue this, but I meant exact phrases. She never mentioned Chad that I can remember. You could argue the Tylee thing. She never mentioned Hawaii. Never mentioned enchiladas. The shirt you could argue she didn't mention because she said shirt, not bamboo, but she mentioned bamboo shirt. I didn't put bamboo shirt because I was afraid she'd be like, could have put bamboo or shirt, but I wrote it, so I know what I meant. But anyway, yeah, we got this down here. Like, this is all things she did. She didn't say why not arrested earlier, but she complained 5 years later. Like, I'm going to consider that. I'm going to count that. You can disagree, and then I didn't get bingo. But I had to put some levity in this, because this is I am physically in pain from my fingers, and it's a depressing case. But we're going to continue, because remember, there's a rebuttal. The state's back. The execution of Charles Vallow is not a family tragedy. There is nothing you can say about shooting a man as he lay on the ground you can construe as any way other than any way to make that a family tragedy. This case is about the defendant, not Alex Cox. Alex is involved in it because that is her co-conspirator. We are not here to determine his guilt, although it is quite obvious. She wants you to look at one piece. You heard in the instruction you can look at other evidence to find the conspiracy. She wants you to forget about her words and when she told her lover and soon-to-be husband that we got rid of him. That he changed the life insurance before we got rid of him. And that somehow means what? They kill him. And he changed his life insurance policy before they killed him. That that tells you the motive and who did it. This defendant, points to Lori, is one of those we's because she is writing it. She wants you to pretend when she talks about Charles for a month acquiescing her brother. How did they word this? Acquiescing to her brother, killing him. She wants to talk about Charles a month prior. She was acquiescing about her brother wanting to kill Charles, and people knew that they were planning something in those lines. That those words don't mean exactly what they are. We got rid of him. The state has the burden. That's how it should be, but every one of those justifications for defenses falls short when you look at the conspiracy itself. When they got rid of him, they did it by planning it. There is no reason that Alex Cox came over to the defendant's house with a loaded gun and waited for Charles to come inside. Held there by the defendant using the cell phone. That is conspiracy. That is planning. That is premeditated. You can absolutely watch the whole video. That is why the state included that video. She's referencing the CD Lori wanted with almost the full interview. You will see Lori Vallow doesn't cry. She isn't truthful. Her timeline is absolutely wrong. She says it was quick when it was 12 minutes. She wants you to believe the police can understand that this day, at that day, but the timeline was off and they knew it then. Then the physical evidence showed Charles was executed on the floor, and that needed the medical examiner to confirm. Then they needed search warrants, iClouds, terabytes of data. They found Lori's beliefs, celestial being that didn't need to repent. Of course she thought she was Nephi. The physical evidence shows Charles was executed. Every one of the defenses the state has met their burden. Even if you don't think the bat was staged, like with the shoes and lack of blood, see, this is important here. They are going, well, if you already you already know the shoes and blood were staged. They're wording it in such a way to set the jury up to already go, well, yeah, I do agree with that. Even if you think the bat wasn't staged, like with the shoes and lack of blood, that second shot is not self-defense for any of the defenses. Arizona law does not allow you to execute a man on the ground. The defendant wants you to think she was shocked and surprised, but she went to Burger King, Walgreens dropped off her kid, and joked about her neighbors. She wants you to feel bad for Tylee. You saw Tylee there. She wasn't shocked, crying, upset. Same with Alex. They've had 47 minutes to figure this out, gone through Charles's phone and talked on the phone twice. This case relies on the investigations the police did. That day when they say the timeline and crime scene don't make sense. All of the evidence after that, culminating when Lori told the man she married later and was having an affair with, Lori wanted Chad Daybell and that life insurance policy. Lori said, we got rid of him. That was Lori's confession to you and why she is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. And then they do the randomized picking of the alternates. Lori was not 10 minutes, but she was pretty quick comparatively to the state. I think the state hit on a lot of things. Lori's defense would have been better if she had an actual lawyer, that's for sure. And now it's up to the jury. It's up to the jury. And before I get off here, I should make sure that there hasn't been a big update with the verdict coming in. So I'm going to have to upload this, and if there's a verdict, I'll probably still do a separate video for the verdict just in case, but I'll talk. The Oblivion remaster, by the way, just side note, has been confirmed for tomorrow announcement at 11 a.m. with the claim that it's going to be available right after the announcement. So, I'm glad I looked. The jury wants to go home. The jury wants to go home. They'll be back tomorrow. The jury's calling it. I expected it because my guess is they're probably sitting there and going, look, if we're going to go through, they probably started going through the evidence and they're like, we need to do enough that we're going to be here really late, especially if they watch that full interview or whatever they're available. It's not the full interview. And they're probably saying, let's just hit it off in the morning, go from there, and we can be set. I think that has to be it. And it makes sense. Like, if they think this is going to take more than a day, maybe they think it's going to take more than they can do today, but maybe not more than a full day. And at that point, just start fresh tomorrow. I see people calling the jury lazy, but I honestly think it makes perfect sense. I really do. I think the jury going home is perfect sense. I'm just double checking if there's anything else. Some people think maybe they took a vote real quick and they all think she's guilty but want to sleep on it. And just, better optics if they wait a bit. That's someone else's thing that I was kind of disliked. It kind of was like in the state's ending, you could kind of word that maybe Tylee helped them. The thing is, Tylee was a victim, right? We know what happened with her. And she was a victim of Lori growing up in general. There is, a lot of people have said Tylee lied for Lori. A lot of people have believed that. And if that's the case, if she lied for Lori, then she was involved in the conspiracy after the fact, at least. Hey, tell them you had the bat, right? Like, if that didn't happen, because the state is arguing that didn't happen at all. If that the state doesn't have to prove it didn't happen. They can put in any possibility. I mean, we heard the way they did the Sarah Boone trial, where they had a bunch of different possibilities out there, right? But I'm sure a lot of people are upset right now. I've seen a couple with the state. They don't like what they said about Tylee. But remember, to the jury's knowledge, Tylee was there. Tylee, for whatever reason, didn't testify. Alex, for whatever reason, didn't testify. They know Alex is dead. They know he's dead. But they don't know why Tylee's not there. So maybe suggesting that maybe she was in on it, but maybe the state couldn't prove it, but maybe that they think will bolster their case as a possibility. I don't know. They can't just not mention Tylee, right? Especially when Lori is trying to use her as a defense. They have to talk about Tylee. That's the thing I'm interested in. What do people think about how the state portrayed Tylee? Maybe I'll put that as a poll when I premiere this. Because I think people will be torn, but I'm sure the family didn't like it, I would assume. I'm sure we'll find out. But yeah, that's it for the day. So, how this is going to work tomorrow. There is going to be a notice to the media that there is a verdict when there is one. If it's tomorrow, if not, it'll be whenever. Then the verdict will be read on a 5-minute delay. Now, the Oblivion remaster is supposed to come out tomorrow. Rumors. The premiere of the video starts at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's the time that everyone just posts was Eastern. I don't know what it is for the rest of it. So that will be earlier than the jury will come in. So that means that I will be up for that. And if it's available immediately, I will be playing it and trying to make content and coming up with ideas for my second channel. My plan is I'm going to have my phone. I'm going to have my phone with notifications on. I'm going to get all notifications from Nate Eaton. And I want to be told when that verdict is coming in. And then I'm going to watch that verdict because I want to see it. Even though we'll know ahead of time when it gets tweeted, I want to see the verdict. And then I might take a few minutes to decide how I want to talk about it. And then we are going to go into the verdict. I'll do a video on it. So if you miss all of that, turn on notifications and subscribe to the channel. I think you have to subscribe first and then turn on notifications. If you do that, I will be doing a video and you'll get the verdict knowledge that way. You'll get a notification. I won't put it in a community post first. So I'll do that. And then I'll try to get that out as soon as possible. If I am distracted by Oblivion, that might delay it. I'm just being honest, just so you know. I want to thank everyone who's followed this case so far. Everyone who has become a member of the channel, subscribed, commented, typed in chat, used the Buy Me a Coffee link, everything like that. Shown interest in my other channel. anything like that. I appreciate all of you. I should say it. I should say it more at the beginning of videos because then people subscribe more. But this seems weird to me. So that's the meta. That's what people do on YouTube. To get But I just want to thank everyone. I really appreciate it. I feel like I don't thank you all enough for tuning in. To be honest, I should do it more. I should do it more. Not only because it has people subscribe, but because I am actually thankful about it. We will have appearances for Lori Vallow scheduled mid-May for the next trial. I don't know what they mean by the next phase. Maybe they have to go through some stuff with this if she's found guilty for aggravating stuff for the sentence. I'm not sure. But literally in a couple weeks, just a few weeks, there'll be more Lori news at the very least. If it's not live stream, it'll be news to cover. So we have that. And I honestly am not shocked by today at all. I really ain't. I'm really not. I think the jury, personally, I think the jury going home is the right move. I think it's the right move. People want the jury to come back quickly because they want that gratification, but that's not what it's about. It's about justice, right? And I think if I was on that jury and we walked in and we did like a preliminary vote and everyone is hardline guilty, I think I would want everyone to go home for the day. Really think about what we saw. Come back in. Both sides told us to review that footage, review that interview, go back through the timeline, and then do a vote. I would say in the spirit of justice, that would be the way I'd want it done if I had a choice. Even like, because you got to think about it. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of names. There's multiple Melanies. There's even another Melanie on an email. It's a fake Melanie. There's a lot of stuff in this case. And remember, there's a lot they don't know. And those things they don't know, they need to be sure that they need to make sure that they aren't misremembering anything. They haven't filled in any blanks that weren't actually filled in, anything like that, because so much was left open in this trial, so much they weren't told. So I think that's about it. I think that sums it up. I'll see you all in the next video. Maybe tomorrow. I will say the state's approach of she already confessed. That was, I didn't think of them using that. I know for sure other people did. That specific wording, that specific phrasing, I think that was really good. I think that was smart. Here's her confession.